Shalom and welcome back to Israel with Aline. Today we are going to explore Nain in Galilee together, a small biblical village, but one that holds a gigantic story, one of Jesus' greatest miracles, when he resurrects the widow's son. And stay with us until the end, because we are going to show you unprecedented archaeological excavations never before seen here on YouTube that are directly related to Jesus' miracle in Nain. Really, today is going to be exciting. So, if you're ready, let's get started. Nain in biblical times was a small village. Only a few hundred people lived here. And even after 2,000 years, this place hasn't changed that much. Nowadays, about 2,000 people live here. And the name of the city, which is called Nain or Nin, probably translates as a calm place or a pleasant place. And seeing where this city was built, the name makes a lot of sense. Because on one side there is Mount Moreh, and on the other side the valley of Jezreel. But even though it was just a small farming village at that time, Jesus performed one of his greatest miracles here. Jesus was coming from Capernaum, which by the roads of that time was about 50 kilometers away, 2 days of travel. And with him were his apostles, disciples, and new followers. And when Jesus was arriving here in Nain, he came across a crowd coming out of the city. But it wasn't a joyful crowd like the one that was with him. Instead, it was a funeral procession full of pain and mourning. They were all going to bury the son of a widow who had passed away. Soon after, Jesus went to a city called Nain. His disciples and a large crowd went with him. As he approached the city gate, behold, the funeral procession of the only son of a widow was coming out. And a large crowd from the city was with her. When the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her and said, "Do not weep." What a powerful moment. Jesus, seeing that boy being taken to his tomb, was filled with compassion. But the compassion was not only for the boy, it was above all for his mother. Because Jesus knew about her suffering, and more than that, he knew what awaited her. At that time, a woman without a man to protect her was extremely vulnerable. The man was the social and economic security of the family. In fact, the Bible tells us that we should take care of the most vulnerable populations. At that time, they were the widows, the orphans, and the foreigners. They were supposed to receive part of the harvest and, in fact, also part of the tithe. And the son was also the one who should continue the family name and also take care of his mother in her old age. And because of that, there is a real chance that this widow was destined for poverty and abandonment, because she was a widow and her only son had died. And Jesus, knowing all of this and being very familiar with the society of that time, he first goes to speak with the mother, with the widow, and only after that does he go and speak with the young man. And notice that she doesn't ask Jesus for anything, unlike others who went to Jesus to ask for miracles. Jesus, seeing her condition and her need, chooses to go to her and help her. And right there, Jesus performed the miracle. Then he approached and touched the coffin, and those who were carrying it stopped. Jesus said, "Young man, I command you, get up." The young man sat up and began to speak, and Jesus gave him back to his mother. Everyone was filled with fear and praised God. After our walk through the city streets, look where we have arrived. Here next to us is the Church of the Miracle, the Church of the Resurrection of the widow's son. And this church was built in 1881. That means it's a modern church. However, it was built on much, much older remains. And what we're going to do now is see the modern church, but mainly explore the archaeology of this place, and afterwards also see the archaeology directly connected to the miracle of Nain. Let's go. As soon as we enter the church, one of the first things we can see is this representation of the miracle. We can see the mother dressed in black in mourning. And just a few moments before she was crying, her face, in fact, is still wet with tears. And the young man, he has just been resurrected. We can see him coming out of his shrouds and getting up. And Jesus here resurrecting him, performing the miracle in front of the crowd next to the city gate. And this church was built over the house of this widow, this same woman we see here. And we have ancient Christian writings that say the church of Nain was built over her house. And we even have some of the church fathers who tell us about this city, about this miracle. For example, Jerome himself and Eusebius of Caesarea. And already in the 4th century, the first church was built here. And something beautiful is that here we can see what looks like a window in the floor. This is the original floor of the Byzantine church. And look at something really impressive. The Byzantine period is the first Christian period in the Holy Land. Until the 4th century, the Romans forbade the construction of churches throughout the Holy Land. And at first in the 4th century, when it became possible to build churches, this was one of the first churches to be built. Imagine this, a small village in the middle of Galilee, which at the time had just a few hundred people or a few thousand people at most. And in this small village, a very important church was built. Because even back then, they understood that the importance of the city wasn't because of its size, but because of the great miracle that happened here. And look, we have this small window that shows the floor, but you can see that there are more of these windows here. So look, I'm going to stand up so you can see. And the third window into time is here next to the altar. So if we go together to this spot, we can see here the original floor from the Byzantine period. So this church has several layers, several historical phases. The oldest church that was built here is the Byzantine one, whose floors we saw. However, this church was destroyed. Then it was rebuilt during the Crusader period in the Middle Ages. And once again, the church was destroyed and only rebuilt in the 19th century, which is exactly the church we see around us today. However, yes, many finds from the time of Jesus and related to Jesus have been discovered. And that's what I want to show you now. Let's go.
Imagine learning a new language just by binge watching your favorite series. As someone working with tourists every day in Israel, learning Hebrew was important to me. But the apps I tried felt boring or ineffective. It felt like I was learning textbook Hebrew, not the Hebrew real Israelis actually speak. Then I discovered Lingopie, the Netflix of language learning. After work, I usually watch TV, so being able to learn a new language while doing something I already enjoy feels incredibly easy and natural. So now I just watch Israeli TV series and learn at the same time. I can tap on any word I don't know and instantly get a translation with context. Plus, it's got tools built in like flashcards, so you can practice later to better learn the words, not just by reading them the first time, but also by taking notes and even fun quizzes. With Lingopai's double subtitle feature, I've started to pick up more words like manishma. Now I can put sentences together, tell a joke in Hebrew, and make Israelis look at me in surprise and ask, "Wait, are you Israeli?" Lingopai offers 13 plus languages like Spanish, French, Italian, Chinese, and more. If you also want to learn a language in a way that feels real and not boring, try Lingopai today. And since you are coming through my channel, you can get 55% off yearly plan and 7 days free trial. Just scan the QR code or click the link below to start learning today. And let me know in the comments how it's going for you. Israel teaches me every day that history lives through language, and now I can finally speak it.
As soon as we leave the church, we come across an area with a lot of archaeological remains, although sometimes it might seem a little hidden. Look at this beautiful flower pot with flowers and succulents. If we look closely, we'll see that it's made of stone. This here is a sarcophagus from the Byzantine period. The sarcophagus was a kind of coffin from that time in which the body was placed, and it's further proof of the Christian presence here during the Byzantine period. This large open area next to the church, at least in my opinion, should be the first area to be properly excavated. However, no large-scale and in-depth archaeological excavations have ever been carried out here. Here, what was done was simply a more superficial analysis. But for sure, when excavations actually take place in this area, an archaeological treasure will be found. Just look at the floor of this place. See how it's covered with thousands of pieces of pottery. Look here. Let me show you up close. These are ceramics from different periods. Notice that this one even has some color, which is extremely rare. And this one, how beautiful. This is the beginning of a jug handle. So these pieces that we see, certainly, at least some of them, are from the time of Jesus and may have been used by the family of this same widow or by her neighbors. We see archaeology springing from the ground here. And as someone who truly loves archaeology, who knows, maybe one day I'll also have permission to excavate in this area. And whether it's me or someone else, for sure whoever comes through here will have a lot to reveal to us. But yes, archaeological excavations were carried out back here, in this area. And that's what I want to tell you about now. You can see that here they have re-erected a Byzantine column. A column from the first church was rediscovered, and they placed it here upright with the help of concrete and modern materials. However, the area that was excavated very close to here, just a few meters from us, was excavated by an archaeologist named Fadi Abu Zedan. And he found several archaeological layers, several strata, and the third stratum he found is actually a house from the Roman period. Guys, the area he was allowed to excavate in 2007 was extremely small. But in this small area he was able to excavate. He found a large house from the time of Jesus, from the 1st century. It was an opulent and imposing house. However, the house was burned and destroyed, and it collapsed on its residents. And it became like a time capsule. And only in 2007, when the archaeologists arrived and opened it, did they find the house exactly as it was on the day it was destroyed. From mundane objects like jars, vases, and lamps to the bones of people. Yes, Some of the remains of the house's residents were found, as well as their jewelry. One of the women in the house had a pair of gold earrings with grapes, with bunches of grapes hanging, and also a ring with a very beautiful stone. And unfortunately, this house was destroyed in a very brutal and dramatic way. Probably either in the year 66 or 67, when all of Galilee was destroyed in the great Jewish revolt against the Romans. And if we're talking about a house from the year 66, and the events here happened around the year 30, there's a good chance that the people who lived in this house may have been witnesses to the miracle that happened here. They were also part of the crowd that went out to take this boy to be buried in the cemetery of Nain. See, we're now on the other side of the church, and there's something surprising and hidden here. Come with me. There's a place that doesn't even look like an entrance. It doesn't even look like a passage, but we do have permission to go in. And look how impressive this place is. It seems abandoned, but it holds archaeological secrets. So let's go on an adventure. All this walking was to get to this giant hole. We can see that there's an underground structure here. However, we still don't know what it was, who built it, and especially from what time period. That's because no official archaeological excavations have been done at this site yet. But local researchers suspect that it might be from the Roman period, from the time of Jesus, and that it could be further biblical evidence of the city of Nain. And a good question is, what is hidden down here? And is it really from the Roman period or maybe from the Byzantine period? But yes, there are talks at the moment that maybe even this year, in 2026, archaeological excavations might begin in these areas. So maybe in the near future I can tell you with more certainty what this is, what period it dates from, and who built it. But for now, it's a big question mark. And look how impressive this is. Walking here, guys, everywhere we go we find more pottery, which shows us how much history, how much biblical archaeology is still hidden in this place. And we always strive to bring all the news and everything wonderful from all of the Holy Land and Israel directly to you. So if you like our work and want to support us, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because it really helps us to keep going with this project. So, restoring archaeology to its proper place and continuing our journey. We moved away from the city center, from the center of Nain. And what I'm going to show you now, I can guarantee that no YouTube channel, TV show, or documentary has ever shown this place. But it's something so impressive, so connected to the miracle in the Bible, that we couldn't miss coming to this place. In 2015, archaeological excavations were carried out in this area. And what they found first was near here a quarry. And from the quarry, they took stones for the construction of the city, maybe even for the wall and the gate. But besides that, agricultural facilities were found, for example, in that area over there, a place to stomp grapes for making juice and wine. But why did I come here? It was because of the third discovery, which is just a few meters from us and that I'm going to show you. What was found here is a Jewish cemetery from the Roman period. That is exactly from the time of Jesus. And it is directly connected to the miracle. Because when that young man, the widow's son, passes away, they need to take him to be buried. When a person passed away, they were taken to be buried very quickly, usually on the same day or the next day. So imagine that when Jesus encounters the widow, her wound was still fresh. She was in deep mourning. She hadn't even had a full day to absorb the news of her son's death and what that would also mean for her life. And right after her son dies, she's forced to take him to be buried, and they put him on a bier. Sometimes in the translations I see that it says coffin, but he's not placed in a coffin. Like in this cemetery that was found and in other Jewish cemeteries, how was this done? The body was wrapped in cloths, in shrouds, placed on a kind of bier and carried. And they were bringing him from inside the city, passing through the gate. Where were they headed? To the cemetery. This is the place where they should have brought the boy. But of course, as we already know, Jesus interrupts that procession, that moment of pain and mourning, and turns it into a miraculous moment of great joy and jubilation. But I want to show you where they were going, and on the way here is where Jesus met them. First, look at this stone I'm standing on. You can clearly see that there are holes dug by human hands. Here, look, we can see these holes. Archaeologists sometimes call this a cup holder. They believe that maybe jars were placed here precisely for the wine production that was done right next to this place. And I know that sometimes it might seem strange that a cemetery is close to a wine production site, but first they are separated, they are not together. I mean, there is no cemetery on the other side. On one side, the cemetery, on the other, the wine production. And one more important point. All Jewish cemeteries had to be outside the wall. And also, agricultural facilities and farming, such as vineyards, were outside as well. So it makes a lot of sense that the cemetery and agricultural activity were both here, close to each other, but outside the wall and the gate. Now, everyone, I want to invite you to come down with me so we can go to the cemetery itself. Let's go. I'm a bit speechless in this place. Look how impressive it is. I'm inside a 2,000-year-old tomb. I know that the way it is today, it's a bit hard to recognize it, but I'll explain it to you and use the original photos from the excavations. So imagine that there was a large burial cave here. Yes, you would enter here, and there was a deep cave and it was closed off, so imagine that there was a ceiling in this area. And you could enter the cave. In the cave, the body was placed, the living would leave, close the entrance, and after a year, they would return to this same cave, collect the bones, and place them in an ossuary nearby in another part of the cave itself. And in this way, the cave could be used once again. And usually this type of cave was a family cave. The same family could use it generation after generation. And this also connects us with Jesus, because Jesus was also buried in a burial cave. Not exactly in this style, but with the same basic principle. The difference is that the cave, the grotto of Joseph of Arimathea, which he gives to Jesus, it says it was a new tomb that no one had ever used before. Why do they need to emphasize that no one had ever used it before? Because the normal thing for tombs at that time was exactly like this. The tomb was used generation after generation. So here we have a large tomb. Looking at the excavation photos, you can see how deep it was. However, when the excavations were finished, the archaeologists covered it up. And not just this one. All the other tombs around here were covered up as well. Looking at the excavation photos, we can clearly see them, but they were covered up to protect both the archaeology and the people who pass by here. Because leaving big holes like this simply open is a fall hazard, I wanted to come today to Nain. First, to show you this archaeological revolution that is happening. To show how really what archaeologists are finding here around the city fits perfectly with what the Bible tells us. I also came here to remember this very important story, this very important miracle, which sometimes doesn't get all the attention it deserves. But I also came here today because Nain is one of the best places to talk about God's mercy, about God's love for all families. Because all families in the world carry wounds and endure suffering and sometimes even grief. And that's why each of us, in our families and in our personal struggles, can remember in difficult moments that God loves us and can come to us too. Even without being called, like the widow who didn't even need to go to Jesus. He went to her and saved the widow from that moment of pain and difficulty she was living through. And because of all this, I decided to show you the city of Nain, the city of Nain today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked it, once again, let me remind you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.